Scientists. Today we are going to investigate what red worms need to live. Our focus question is, what do red worms need to live? Let me dig in this moist soil and find a worm. All right, I got a couple of worms. Whoops, one slipped away. All right, let's take a look at these worms. I don't want them to get away. How do they move? Take a look. Are they moving straight forward or do they curl as they move? Oh, this guy wants to really get away. Do they move straight? Let me just do one worm at a time. I don't want them to get away. I'll put him back. Look at how he moves. Is he moving in a straight line? Or does he curl as he moves? Let's put him in a nice straight line and see how he moves. Does he move straight? Or is he moving differently? He's moving in a... He kind of bends his body a little bit as he moves. See him kind of move into an S shape. And now, see how he's not going straight? He kind of made a turn now. What would happen, do you think, if we put something in the worm's way? Let's see. Let's put something in his way. Is he going to go around it? What's he going to do? Oh, he's backing up now. Backing up. Maybe he'll... Yep, he decided he would go a totally different direction. What do you think the snails would have done? Do you think they would have done the same thing? We're going to read a chapter of our science book, and it will help you answer the question, what do worms need to live? This one is called Worms in Soil. Worms are animals. Where do you find worms? These worms live in the soil. They get water and food from the soil. Worms need air, space, and shelter too. They get what they need from the soil. Some worms live in compost piles. Can you see the worms on the plants and soil? What are they doing? What are they doing? See, with this extra food. Worms eat dead leaves and fruit. They turn old plant parts into soil. The new soil helps young plants grow. Some worms burrow deep in the soil. Others stay near the top. Damp leaves lie on top of the soil. Worms stay moist under the leaves. They also find food there. Worms have segments. Segments help the worms move. Adult earthworms have a clitellum. The clitellum makes a case for worm eggs. Baby worms grow inside the eggs. There's the clitellum. A worm's skin is moist and smooth. Worms breathe through their moist skin. Some worms live on land, like that guy. Some worms live in fresh water or salt water, like that guy. How are these worms the same? How are they different? Well, let's take a look. Let's look at that one. And then this one, and then this one, and then this one. Do they all have segments? Do we see their segments? They do. They all have segments. They all are shaped pretty much the same. How are they different? They're different colors, sizes, thicknesses. This is a thinner worm. This is a thicker worm. What do you think? And that is the end of the chapter. So now that we've read the chapter book, What Do Worms Need to Live? We understand why we set up the worm container the way we have. We know that worms need food and water and air and shelter. And we know that the food that the worms eat, they get from the soil, but also the food that we put in to the worm bin, the little pieces that you saw of the lettuce that are kind of mixed in now. Let's find a piece. And here's a piece of the lettuce that the worm is breaking down. We put that in the soil. Here's another piece of food that the worm is turning into soil. The worm eats the food and actually turns it into rich, perfect, wonderful soil. We know that worms get their water from the soil too, but the soil has to be kept moist. I have to make sure this soil is nice and wet. Does it look wet to you? Look at my fingers. Do they look wet? The soil is very, very moist. It's very wet. It's almost like mud. If the soil dries out, the worms will die. They need moist soil, and they need to keep their bodies moist. So our food is in the soil, the water is in the soil, the worms breathe through their skin. We don't have the soil packed so tightly. There's lots of air in between the little bits of soil that the worms are breathing. And then we finally top off our worm bin with some newspaper, which helps to actually keep it moist in the soil. And it also gives the worms extra food to eat. They actually will eat some of this newspaper also. They would turn everything in this bin back into soil. How do worms turn food back into soil? They actually eat the food and poop it out, and it comes out as the soil. The nutrients from the food go into the soil and make the soil better. You're going to get a paper that looks like this, and it says, "What do redworms need to live?" And it has the picture of the jar that we use with our redworms. Let's see, if we go back to the book, it says they get water and food from the soil. So what do they need to live? They need water, they need food. It also says they need air, space, and shelter too. They get what they need from the soil. So what do redworms, we go back to our paper, what do redworms need to live? We had said water, food, air, space, and shelter. There we go. Worms need food, water, air, space, and shelter. How are the things that worms need the same as the things that we need? We need food, we need water, we need air, we need space for our bodies, and we need shelter. Worms and humans need the same things to live. We get them from different places, though. Where do we get our food? We get our food from plants and animals. Worms also get their food from the plants in the soil, but also from nutrients that are in the soil itself. water. Where do the worms get water? Their skin is moist, and they use the water in the soil. They soak that into their skin. We need air to live, and so do worms. They take in air through their skin. We breathe air into our lungs. We all need space to move. And then shelter. They need the shelter of the soil. They need to make sure. They want to dig down deep into the soil, because what if they're right on top? They might be spotted by a bird or another predator that eats worms. So they want to dig down deep into the soil. That's their shelter. That's what keeps them safe too. So let's take a little look at our jar. Maybe we'll draw a picture of the worm inside the soil, and then on top of the soil in our worm jar, that's where we have, maybe I'll draw a celery stalk, and I'll draw maybe a cucumber. And I've also given the worms, let's see, what else have I given them? I've given them leaves from strawberries, so some of that too. So I drew some of the food that we gave them. And then on top, remember, we put the newspaper. So we put the paper on top. We put their food, and then this is the soil. And it's moist soil. Because if it were dried out soil, the worms wouldn't get enough water, and they wouldn't be able to keep their bodies moist. Remember, we had said worms must keep their bodies moist. So this is what you're going to be doing. You can color when you're done if you'd like, and then you're going to glue it onto the next clean page in your science notebook. We have answered our focus question, what do red worms need to live? I hope you have a wonderful day.